1:38 o'clock.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Para OR Normal Guyz. We are joined today by what I'm dubbing as the Paranormal Attorney, Jeff Lippman, and of course, my lovely and beautiful sidekick, Deana. Let's bring her in here. Hello,
Hi.
Deana. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's daytime.
Yeah, I know. I want to remind everybody we are not live, so we are taping this as a bonus episode for you because we couldn't get our schedules worked out. So we're just going to record and surprise you all with the special episode. So there's no live chat at the moment, but we will be live soon. So in the meantime, let's get Jeff in here. Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, I think I like Paranormal Attorney better than Abnormal Attorney. So that
Paranormal's good.
Actually, it may not be a bad thing that this is recorded, because if people send questions and comments and inquiries later on, it may actually provide content for a future show. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. It would be awesome.
Yeah. I've already thought of a couple of little legal scenarios for paranormal attorneys, so I figure we'll see how this one goes. And if you're interested, we may do, a couple here and there.
Okay, sounds cool.
We got some things for you.
All right. Good.
Deana and I have tried to wrap our heads around the possibility of somebody actually finding, hunting, and killing a Bigfoot. Now, there was a TV show that was on a while back, and they weren't successful, but they were on private property, I believe, but in their hunts. And no one that we know of has been successful. There's been no, quote, end of quote, body. And so we are really talking in hypotheticals here, but the possibility is real. There's a wild creature out there possibly that could intimidate or cause fear in someone, and they would actually shoot it. And then, of course, I guess it lies upon, do they go to the authorities? What do they do with it? That probably entails a whole legal mess too. So that's why we brought in Jeff to try and figure out if you're stupid enough to actually shoot one and survive, what could happen to you?
Or maybe you're not stupid to do so. Maybe you don't have a choice. But
True.
But yeah, let's do it. There's so many permutations. So yeah, I don't know where you want to start.
Let's go with some scenarios.
Sure. You got one revved up, Deana? You look like you're.
No, I do
reading.
not.
Oh,
My daughter has a knack for texting me. I'm sorry, I'm listening, but she has a knack for texting me while I'm on the shows.
Well, does she have any scenarios?
We might bring her into the show.
I can ask her. She will come up with something. Let me ask her.
Yeah, is it a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, urine, Yowie, Yeti related scenario? Oh. So I actually recorded an episode of Garden of Doom. For those of you who don't know, that's my sort of paranormal and beyond podcast with a folklorist from Kashmir, and they have a version of a Yeti that's sort of more like a jungle man, but in one of the fables, this Yeti fell in love with a human woman, took the human woman from her husband, but apparently she preferred being with the Yeti, and she mutually fell in love with him too. Sort of a little bit like Persephone. So then the human and his brother, they tracked down the Yeti and they beat him to death. And I'm like,
oh my goodness.
What kind of Yeti is that? I mean, Yeti's supposed to be able to tear people apart. So it's not clear if it's just a diminutive, wimpy Yeti, or if this Yeti was an outlier. Or if a Yeti falls in love with a human woman, it sort of loses its strength, like if when Samson lost his hair.
Yeah, true. Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's one scenario. If you are a Yeti in let's just say North Central Asia, stay away from women. Human women. They're bad news for you.
Yeah, bad news for the monster.
Yeah.
Now, there was no follow-up on what the local constabulary thought about it, what the law thought. I'm going to go with that they were okay with it. So it probably doesn't fit into. But actually, I mean, I think the scenario generally, before you kind of get into specifics, depends a lot on where this happens.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, earlier you said private property, and that's probably makes a big difference in a lot of places, but in others, not so much. So a mall is private property, and let's just imagine that Bigfoot gets into a mall, and you start shooting at it. Whether you hit it or not, you could be charged, and probably would be charged, with reckless endangerment. Where I live is a suburb, and there is a lot of forest land and whatever, and some of it is private, not all of it. And we have hunting seasons. So if you shoot deer during deer hunting season on the private property, it's okay. If you don't, it's not. I imagine if you shoot at something that turns out not to be a deer, but looked like maybe it was, the same rules would probably apply. And again, every now and then bullets do lodge themselves in people's homes if you're a particularly bad shot or unlucky. And that could be reckless endangerment if it's out of season. If it's in season, unless you can prove some sort of malice or whatever, or they just went to the edge of the property and were aiming at houses, then it's just, the cost of living near this private property where bullets may fly. I'm guessing, like in parts of the world where private property is sacrosanct, that any trespasser, can be shot at. And there's probably a lot of places where it's sort of in between. But you do it in the city in Baltimore, and you start shooting Bigfoot or not, you're probably going to be charged with reckless endangerment. If they want to get you, they're going to get you.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely.
So that was sort of just a geographical thing to it, while you came up with some examples. But there's let's say Florida, there's stand your ground. I don't see why that would be any different for a Bigfoot than it would be for a person. Then you've got the castle defense in many places, where if something makes it into your home, it's your castle, you can defend your castle. And then you've got self-defense, which is generally if you are in reasonable fear, or if you are in subjective real fear, and whether or not, and then some places it's how proportionate is it? Can you bring a gun to a knife fight? Usually, can you bring a gun to a fist fight? Well, maybe. If it's a 12-year-old kid, coming at you with a fist fight, probably not. If it's Hulk Hogan coming at, well, not Hulk Hogan now, but Hulk Hogan 35 years ago. Yeah, probably it is. The interesting thing is about protected species, even in public parks, that if you shoot a bear, or wolves where they're protected, that's strict liability. That's a crime. Now, whether it's a life sentence or 5 years or whatever, I'm not sure, but that's a crime no matter what. So, is a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, a protected species? Well, it's not on any EPA list right now. So, I think again the where makes a big difference, and probably in your original scenario, probably would be a national or state park where there's lots of large open forest lands, mountains, and whatnot, and that may make a large difference of it. You might actually get lucky if you killed a Sasquatch instead of killing, a protected gray wolf.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point.
Yep.
Well, I am a paranormal lawyer.
Yes, that's great. Well, you talk about fear. I don't know many people that if they saw a Sasquatch wouldn't be in fear.
Right.
So I'm sure that's a big thing that would be a big defense is, I was in fear for my life, and, here I'm 220 pounds. This thing 700 pounds or more, and I was in fear of my life. So that'll make a big difference too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd put that one before a jury. I mean, if it made it that far, without hesitation. I mean, yeah, I think that anybody would find the fear again until it made it onto some protected species on protected ground where it's strict liability. That's a solid defense. I did read what you sent to me, and I know that there's a law in Washington State that you can't kill a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, and we're definitely going to get to that. And then I also saw the link where they got something like, and it was related to the same article about the Washington State law, but they found like 15 law professors, but from British Columbia, which is Canada, so not exactly, the opinions of law professors would not be binding on any court anyway. It might be influential or influential on policymakers, but it was interesting that the law professors they found were in British Columbia, but there were 15 of them, and they were arguing that if the Sasquatch is determined to be human, then you're in trouble.
Yeah,
that's clever, but I don't think it would hold up, and we can get to why when it's when we get to a natural point to get, which could be now, or it could be, or we could go through some of your scenarios first, whatever you like.
Well, when you say if he was found to be human, does that mean if he was like if the person was in a costume, could that be considered in that case?
I was actually talking about a more metaphysical situation,
I know,
or taxonomous.
Right, I understand.
If it's a person in the costume, I think for the moment I would go back to how good a costume is it. Was it my Planet of the Apes costume from when I was in grade school, where it's just a plastic mask, and I would say no. If it was the what we see on the Patterson Gimlin film, I mean, that looks pretty scary. I'd say maybe so. I don't know about the daylight, but certainly at night, certainly in a forest and in dark area, and maybe in the daylight. Nobody's quite found that costume, and we don't know how realistic it would look. I also think it depends on who the seer is. If it's a kid in their house that somehow has access to a weapon, or if it's an elderly person, or someone with that has senility or dementia or Alzheimer's, or not great sight, and of course also if it's a stand your ground or castle state. Did they break the plane of your property? There are places where the castle defense is that you have to be either break into a window or a door, or be dark close to it. And there's others, they could just be trespassing on your property line, and open fires is allowed. I'm in Maryland. That's not the case here, but I'm sure that there are places like that. I mean,
yes, there are.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the quality of costume and the person. But I was thinking if they're a human, and I think that would have to be determined before anyone could be successfully charged. So I think the first person to do it, even if went to trial, would be acquitted on at least reasonable doubt. And here's the reason why. I think for very banal reasons, we don't agree on what is or what isn't human, just going back on our own paths, or what we presume our ancestral paths are. I mean, there's still not agreement on whether Neanderthals were just a different variation of Homo sapiens, or if they're separate and distinct. If they're a separate and distinct species, because we have Neanderthal DNA, which means at some point anyway, we were able to breed with them. And now they found others, the Denisovans or Denisovans, and same conversation. But what about in the taxonomy? There's the 7-foot hominid, the Homo heidelbergus, and is that human? Is it not? I mean, we're not sure if humans started with, Lucy, Homo, which I think was Homo erectus, maybe, or Homo habilis.
Can't remember.
So, it would have to be determined as human first. And I would also say that the dead Bigfoot, even if they found out on a genetic level that it was, that probably wouldn't count, because it would probably have to pass some sort of Turing test, some sort of, sentience test. I don't know what the correct word for it is, but, what they're trying to do with dolphins and octopuses and figure out how smart are they? Should they be considered sentient beings if they deserve more protections?
Right.
And if it's, sort of a ape, that hasn't been considered the case. If it's, more bearish, or if it's something else. So I really think the first person, no matter what, would get away with it, despite what their fear is, because I would think it would fall into a category where if you have to try to prove something is human in a court of law, it's going to be a battle of experts. And for as many experts as, let's just assume that everyone has unlimited budget here, and the state or the feds or whoever, they're going to bring on professor after professor to say, this is a human. And you could bring on as many anthropologists, and zoologists who come out and say, it's not a human. And once you have a battle of experts, unless all of them are on one side are from, the greatest schools ever, and all of them on the other side are from cruddy schools, even though I'd say there's a chance. I think that you've lost if it's that kind of battle of experts with a jury of 12. You just need to have doubt in one that it's a human. And even then, if you get past that, then you still have your self-defense and your reasonable fear, and then all of that other kind of thing. So I think the definition of human would be very difficult to do without there being live samples to determine whether or not they're intelligent enough to be considered human, as opposed to an animal. I'm sorry to animal rights activists and PETA out there, but animals don't get the same status in law as humans, for better or worse. It just is what it is. So I think that would be a big one. There's also, even if you could prove it was human, now I want to get more into the paranormal part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could also find, and you have spoken to them. I know you've spoken to them because I've heard some of the shows where you've spoken to these people, as have I, where people say that Bigfoots, no matter what they're made of, they're aliens, or they're interdimensional beings, or they're supernatural. And it's not that they're human, it's that we're part them, that we were part of a hybrid program or whatever. And you could have enough of those, and we all, we wouldn't be doing these types of podcasts if there wasn't an audience for them. And again, you only need one on a jury of 12 to believe that, especially if they're, in the, I'll just call the 2030ers who, are sure that by 2030, we're going to be, in Revelations. So, there's a whole doctrine of Christian paranormal, which Bigfoot absolutely squarely fits into something supernatural. And it's not that Bigfoot is human, it's that we have some DNA from these other creatures that are somewhere above human but below God, or below human but but work for Satan. That have infused us with their DNA over millennia. So there's that as well as another defense. So if you're a paranormal, you can't, a paranormal attorney, you can't ignore the paranormal aspects as part of your potential defense strategy.
Absolutely. And that makes some valid points. And something you touched on was the DNA. We don't really have any definitive DNA that anyone can agree on. So this would actually be the first. So, like you said, they probably would get a pass just on that alone. So if it was on private property or national park system, that's going to play a part. And then of course your fear. And then, like you said, if it's a person that, if it's a teenager with a 30-30 out there plinking and it happens, that's different than a 60-year-old man out walking his fields or something, I think. So yeah, I think all of those are variables, and any of it's going to set precedents. I mean, let's just be honest. And you brought up the religious part of it. I had never even actually thought about that, because there's two camps. There's those that it's flesh and blood, and there's those that it's a demon and it's paranormal, supernatural. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. Now let's take this situation and move it into Washington State, where there's actually a law against killing a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. Well, here's a question. And I don't mean to pose it to you. I mean, it's a rhetorical or a point, because this would be the first, in air quotes, Bigfoot or in air quotes, Sasquatch to be killed. Is this a real statute? Just because this is the first creature to be killed, how do you know it's a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch when we don't have any taxonomy for it? Maybe it's just a new, a holdover of the, what were the giant gorillas called? The Licopus.
Yeah, yes.
But they were like 12 foot, tall, apes, whatever, 30,000 years ago or 13,000 years ago, whatever, that God went extinct with, the other megafauna with these giant, Siberian rhinoceros and woolly mammoths and mastodons and giant sloths and whatever. Just because the law says it's a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch and you find something that fits into that definition, but it's never been determined to be, this is what a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch is. I mean, homicide is death of a human being. The laws against the gray wolves also has the taxonomy of what, lupus caninus, whatever the species is. So if the gray wolf was protected, but the red wolf isn't, I mean, it's probably just luck on the part of whoever shot it. But I would say that even in Washington, it's probably Washington State, that is, it's probably just sort of a nicety law. I don't think a prosecutor could prove it, because you first have to establish that this is what a Bigfoot Sasquatch is, and this is what the legislature intended at the time. I don't think there's a lot of annotations on it. I don't think there's like the Federalist Papers on this. I think they just passed the law, and I think that statute's from 1959ish, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty old, in the 50s, yeah.
So my guess is that anybody who was in the legislature arguing that and doing that some 60-something years ago, they're probably dead by now. Or just don't want to talk about it. So I think that would be considered one of those statutes that's it's unduly vague and broad, and you first have to determine what kind of creature or animal this is. You can't just say, well, this is what I would imagine a Bigfoot or Sasquatch to be, so the law applies here.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. How would you like to be the legislator that was the only thing you got passed in your entire tenure?
You're like a crazy person.
That's what you were saying. Of course, Georgia had the famous one where she said, I forget what it was, but she stood up in the middle of Congress and talked about UFOs and aliens. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, Lord.
Well, that's in vogue now. So she was
yeah,
a leader.
It is.
She was a trailblazer.
Yeah, she was. She was a little crazy too. Had to be from Georgia.
Well,
so no, go ahead, Deana. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said, well, don't you have? Is Hank? What's his name? The one that's on the islands? Yeah, isn't he from Georgia?
Yeah. He was my county commissioner when I worked at the fire department. Yeah.
He
was a winner then too.
The islands tipped over.
Yeah. They brought us in while we were in the academy and wanted us to do push-ups in front of them, and we quickly informed them that we were not there to do that. So yeah. Not a fan of Hank.
He's a genius.
I think George has bred him. Good Lord. So
Okay, I'll shut up now.
Kentucky, for God's sakes. West Virginia, had to be Georgia. So, but well, speaking of states, it does also, like you said, make a difference if you shot one there, and there is legislation. If let's just say we'll hop down the 5 there and go to California, where everybody knows about them and everybody talks about them. It's like it's not a secret. Well, you're probably looking at then your jury is going to be, I don't want to say tainted, but it would be slanted because they'd be like, well, we know what they are. We knew what they are. They were going to hurt us. And here this guy popped one off. So that's going to make a difference too.
Supposedly a lot in Tennessee here too.
I mean, what's even the jurisdiction? I mean, again, you'd have to, if it's not an endangered species, it's probably not federal. It would probably have to be state or county. And what's the statute? There's, it probably wouldn't fit under human. Again, we've talked about that, so there's no need to talk about it before. So, there'd have to be something about killing animals, period. And even if that's and then the interesting thing is the arguing that it's human becomes a defense. If you're charged with killing a wild animal when you're not supposed to say, okay, well, I'm going to kill the human. And then they say, okay, we're going to charge you with homicide. Well, you created reasonable doubt. You charged him with killing a wild animal. So, it's like when somebody gets charged with a crime and it goes to trial, and then they charge somebody else and try to get a conviction. It's like, well, I mean, my reasonable doubt is your office, Mr. and Mrs. District or State Attorney, because you charged someone else and took them to trial saying that they were guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now you're trying to say that I'm guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So that would be a fun little one. I mean, not for the defendant, but that would be an interesting case to go with. But again, I think they would have to be determined to be human. And again, with the death of the creature not be able to determine its sentience. I mean, the only thing that would help if it was like 100% human and it was found to be some sort of deformity or birth defect that sort of made it like, Enkidu syndrome, from Gilgamesh, the ape man, the wild jungle man. But even then, if I saw a jungle man that could be confused with a Sasquatch, I would say my reasonable fear would be even if it's 40 feet away, how do I know what its leaping ability is or its speed is? Or how many shots does it take to put it down of whatever I'm, even if I'm carrying buckshot, I mean, how do I know what this giant muscle-bound bear gorilla thing, how many buckshots it takes to hit it and how far away and, we've all seen the Hulk bullets just bounce off Hulk, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because these things have been reported like, 7 to 10 feet tall or more?
Yeah, we really don't know. Let's change the methodology of it. Let's say you're driving through a rural area at night and you strike a Bigfoot with your vehicle. You pull over, you stop, and you go, oh, crap, what have I done? And then you leave the scene. Pending, I don't know if your car would survive that, or you have your buddy with the tow truck come get you. And you just roll it off on the side of the road. Is the methodology of the killing going to make a huge difference as far as if it was like a motor vehicle that they struck it accidentally?
I think in those circumstances, absolutely. I mean, from a criminal basis, let's just take all the other stuff we talked about, put aside. It's determined to be human or absolutely protected species. Let's just get all of those ifs out of the way and say wherever this road is determined to be human, it would be a homicide. That's still an accident. So something jumps in front of the road, you hit it, that's not homicide. You leave the site of an accident, I mean, it's already dead. So what's the crime? I mean, the crime is to your own car. Maybe the crime is to your insurance company that you commit insurance fraud. But if you say I hit an animal, I mean, and I kept going because I could drive. I mean, I'm sure where you live, it's the same situation. I live in Maryland. There's deer all over the place on the side of the road, dead. And occasional raccoons, opossum, other, I've driven through Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma. I don't think you can go 500 feet without seeing a dead armadillo on the side of the road. So hitting an animal by accident, wouldn't be a crime. And I don't know where the civil liability would be either. So an accident is an accident. So unless you cause property damage to someone else, I don't think that would be punishable at all. Now let's go to an alternate universe where Bigfoots are not considered human, but they can be someone else's property, like a horse or a dog. I think even in that circumstance, it's an accident. You have no duty. But let's say it was daylight and you had plenty of chance and you maliciously hit it. Well, then, you're probably just charged with property damage. But so there's a difference if I hit your dog or if I hit your show dog that's a award breeding animal or a show animal. There's a difference between hitting a deer or just a horse or a racehorse. So if I don't know, Mr. Moneybags, Mr. Monopoly Money owns a Bigfoot. And because he owns the only Bigfoot, and we'll call him he because men are evil, of course. And
damn patriarchy.
Right, down with the patriarchy. And the Bigfoot is his property for he's going to start a Bigfoot ranch to start doing it. And we don't know the different quality of Bigfoots. We don't know that there's some that are more beautiful or better breeding stock than the others. This is the only one. So you hit something that's possibly priceless. So with that, he wasn't going to breed. He was going to clone. They were going to do that. He's not.
Oh,
he froze up.
And
Government got him.
there you go. Come on.
They knew he was talking about it. You froze up there for a minute, Jeff.
Oh, okay. So Mr. Moneybags is going to clone it. So and he's got his cloning biological labs, in international waters or in Macau or someplace that doesn't have the same ethical and legal constraints to just
Oh shit.
Oh,
I got him. There he is.
Yeah.
The government just doesn't like this.
Somebody doesn't want us talking about this. I'm sorry, Mr. Moneybags. So you might have killed something. So your insurance policy limits probably comes into play then, as and if hopefully you have umbrella coverage under your insurance policy, and then Mr. Moneybags really wants to go there, then I guess you're looking at a personal bankruptcy, right? But it's still civil.
Yeah.
Civil, yeah. And then I was thinking, what if he was going to start like a Ringling Brothers and Barnum's and Bailey and take him on a tour? Then that's another thing. But once again, it'd be a priceless.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Moneybags would probably, maybe would have had the forethought to have his bought and paid for legislature pass both federal and state crimes for it, and maybe then it would be criminal. So we could change that scenario, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. So, if you're rich enough to own a Bigfoot,
you're going to protect it. He'd also have him insured.
Right. Well, yeah, he would insure it as well. And, but probably to get, despite being Mr. Moneybags, insurance companies will be insurance companies, and they will require that you at least file a police report and try to go before they pay out that, that you didn't set it up to collect on the Bigfoot. Because what we know about most Moneybags is that they still like using other people's money and leveraged funds instead of their own. That's one of the secrets to staying Moneybags is.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very true.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
You touched on them being, we'll call them interdimensional, intergalactic creatures. What if they are from another world or something? Are you shooting an undocumented alien or?
Oh yeah.
Well, exactly. The laws of Earth pretty much cover the laws of Earth. So So if it's an alien, I don't know that it's protected under the laws of Earth unless there's some sort of statute that does that. And then we're back to your famous Georgia legislature. You called a little crazy, but I call a trailblazer because, when or if that happens, there's, nobody was brave enough to put that statute on the book. So I would say that killing an alien is, and by this I mean alien from another world, another dimension. And by the way, those could be two different categories. I mean, another dimension. I mean, the laws of this universe might not even apply.
True.
They broke the laws of physics. I mean, they're trespasser everywhere, right? So, but alien. I mean, I don't know if this is a legal myth or if it's true, and I really should have looked it up before the show because I should have known it came up. But somewhere in the recesses of my brain, I remember that there.
They really don't like the government. Really doesn't like us talking about this.
Well, it might not be the government if you hear where I'm going with this. So somebody, and again, I hope this is not a fiction that it actually happened, but somebody sued Satan, and it made its way to the federal courts, and a federal judge who obviously didn't want to have anything to do with it, but didn't want to, get this person to, make them the Lex Luthor in their life because they're folks like that. And every lawyer learns that at some point, whoever their defendant or defendants were, if the lawyer fails or whatever, that they become the next villain. And and they're easier to not let go of. So the judge said that Satan is a supernatural extra earth being. And as such, the United States federal courts and the United States federal law has no jurisdiction over Satan. So case dismissed. So I would argue that the same would apply for an extraterrestrial being, whether, and maybe doubly so to an extra dimensional being.
True. Yeah.
How do you determine which they are?
They'd have to. I don't know.
Maybe that's another one. But I imagine some astrophysicist would be able to tell whether or not they're made up of something that wholly belongs to another dimension as opposed to this universe. But how the heck would we know that?
True.
I mean, our government might, but we don't.
Yeah, even if they were phasing and glitching before our eyes. The universe is pretty big. I mean, you see those Webb telescope pictures, and apparently there's billions of galaxies with billions of stars. So, literally the options are infinity. And, way before you get to infinity, you get to reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
That's a good line.
That's a great line. It is. If you happen to shoot one and it's an animal, can you claim it? Does it become your property?
I suppose if it's on public land or on the side of a road,
or if it's on your property or whatever.
I suppose you probably can. Again, it depends where you are. Like here, like if you hit a deer with your car, you're not allowed to tie it to the hood of your car and take it home for meat. I have no idea how they enforce that. I mean, they'd actually.
Yeah, here you can. Yeah.
Yeah. But in other places, you can. I mean, what you have to do here is you've got to call the State Department of Transportation. They send out someone to collect it. And who the heck knows what they do with it? I mean, for all I know, they serve venison in the state prisons.
Right.
Or the Soylent Green version of venison.
Yeah.
It's probably a safety thing, the carry-on and disease and whatever, though. I'm sure an outdoors person will tell me that you cook that stuff all out. Yeah. But, yeah, you can't do it here. And usually the turkey vultures or buzzards get to it way before the state does.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. Who would want to stuff a Bigfoot? That's a good point.
Know. Who wouldn't if you're the person that has the only one?
Right.
Well, no, I'm talking about the actual physical person to do it. Who would?
Yeah. How would you get somebody to
everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. Everyone wants their viral TikTok video. Everyone wants to be the taxidermist who actually stuffed a bit. You become the most successful taxidermist in the world.
Yeah.
You would become the taxidermist to the celebrities and the elite and the royal families. I mean, I stuff Bigfoot. I mean, you just change your business from, Leonard von Stupid Job to I stuff Bigfoot LLC.
Right. The first taxidermist to ever stuff a Bigfoot or to ever mount a Bigfoot.
Hey, what are you talking about? Mount a Bigfoot? This is
you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
No, do I? We've only met once before. I don't know.
I would get into a different law. That might be bestiality. So.
Oh no.
Or it could just be a fetish. I mean, again, there comes that human versus non-human thing.
Could be.
Yeah, they liked furries. So.
Oh Lord.
That's a different type of show.
Yeah, well, maybe it's the same. I thought it was a furry defense. I thought it was a furry. I thought it
was a furry. I was dressed as a furry. It was dressed as a furry. Hey.
It had to be consensual. I mean, I couldn't take that thing involuntarily. What are you talking about?
Oh, Lord.
So this is not a family show anymore, I guess.
No.
No, twist I hadn't thought of, but I guess
Radio MA.
Yes. I guess if we're talking in the possibilities of things happening, that could happen as well. So
yeah,
but I don't know that you would want to run out and tell. I mean, like you said, there's somebody that would love the 15 minutes of fame. I guess I'm just thinking about myself, but
yeah, that's not the fame I would want. But no. I'm not a furry, and I'm into humans and married, so I'm into human. Yeah. So not me. But
I actually meant mount it on a platform or something. That's what you do when you're a taxidermist. You mount the fish on a board or a deer head on a board. That's what it's called. You mount it.
Everyone knows that if you don't mount a fish on a board, it can't sing.
That's true. Like Billy Bass.
It's science.
Yeah.
I was joking. This will probably offend somebody when we're out in the woods camping and on our expeditions that I'll be the unlucky soul that finds the only gay Bigfoot.
Yeah, so. Not. He'll be like, come here.
But once again, who would I come and tell? No one. What happens in the forest stays in the forest.
Unless it's love.
Yeah,
well.
Unless you thought you were unlucky until you realized that you just got lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want my 15 minutes of fame on the Enquirer being that. So.
Oh no.
That would get you a total different kind of probing from the government. So.
Yeah.
It would get you a reality show on Bravo, though.
Yeah, you would.
Absolutely.
Network or.
I'm in love with Bigfoot. Bigfoot's in love with me. I was Bigfoot's bitch.
Wow, Deana, you take the show to such different levels. I love it.
I'm so sorry. I can't help it. My mind just goes that way.
Imagine the interviews with Andy Cohen.
Yeah.
It's a whole new connotation to After Dark.
She's going to embarrass me one of these days. She hasn't done it yet. So.
I'm so sorry. I worked with police.
Well, you sort of set yourself up for it with the
exactly.
You stumble upon a gay Bigfoot.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I worked with police officers and EMTs and paramedics all my life. So since I was a child,
individuals. So
yeah.
That's right. This is the Para First Offender show. I mean, not offenders, First Responder show.
First responder.
Well, I mean, all right. We'll throw the paramedics in there. Let's say that you do strike a Bigfoot. It's laying on the side of the road. You call 911. The sheriff's department calls the medics out. As a paramedic, do I have a duty to treat this thing?
Probably not. I mean, do you have a duty to treat a bear or a dog or a deer?
The only legislation I know about that we do have a duty to is police canines, service animals.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. And I know that's in Georgia. I don't know. We have to.
Say that you don't. And I think at that point, it just becomes an assumption of risk is like, how much do you want to preserve the life of this, as far as you know, not yet discovered type of creature, or at least not yet discovered in North America. Even if it turns out to be a chimpanzee or whatever, there's not a whole lot of North American chimpanzees that are not in captivity. So, but as far as an obligation, unless there is some state that has a law that makes it your obligation to try to do that, I don't think, or it's actually the sheriff out there, and while you're there, goes, I hereby deputize this.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
Does that still work? Can sheriffs still just deputize whoever they want at whim? Like
so.
I've seen it in like.
Well, there actually there was just a case, and I think it was Memphis, but I'm not 100% sure. Two paramedics followed the order of a senior police officer on scene, and they basically overdosed a person on ketamine and killed them. And they just got man one and was sentenced.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot more into that case. There was a whole lot of stupid, in my opinion, going on with that. But yeah, they just put two paramedics in jail for overdosing somebody with ketamine because they didn't know that they already had drugs on board, and they were told to do it by the sheriff's department or the sheriff. Yeah, it was a whole mess.
That is.
The law enforcement got sovereign immunity. The fire department did
man. That is not. That's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard about that case, but I didn't realize there were so many complexities and nuances to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sure it'll be appealed and it will go up. But yeah, law enforcement got sovereign immunity, but the duty to act and the medical, they should have known that he had more drugs. Blah 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 was under a different.
How could they have known if nobody told them or they didn't?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know all the details of the case. I just know that paramedics listened to a non-medical person and did something, and you're going down the wrong way when you do that to start with. So
yeah,
that sounds like the first mistake. But this is sort of the opposite situation where you're trying to save it, and the direct order of a police officer. I mean,
yeah, because first of all, they're not the on-scene. Fire department is actually the on-scene command. Is it that way in every state, Glenn? I'm not sure.
As far as I know, I don't know the official doctrine, but whenever the fire department is involved, the fire chief is in charge until the fire department leaves or turns it over to someone else.
Yeah, that's pretty
it's
sure.
It's always been a gray area, but that's been the general the rule. So, but I don't know the actual law on it. And you don't usually have to pull that out unless you're doing something like closing down an interstate and the state police is raising hell or DOT is there. And you don't go, well, sorry, my guys are going to be safe. I don't care if you need one lane of traffic open. So,
well,
that's usually the end
here.
I think in critical incidents too, they're like when they set up how do you call it?
I mean, I know once they get to the hospital, the attending physician is sort of like the captain of the ship at that point.
Right. Yeah. But on like in scenes and situation, critical incidents, or even on a wreck scene or some type of incident, the fire department is there. Whoever's the fire department is in charge. It's not the police. It's not
your scene
EMS or whatever. They're in charge of the scene.
Yeah, and even you were talking about getting to the hospital. The paramedics are operating under the county doctor's license, so they're actually the on-scene. He's the on-scene medical control. So that gets a little tricky. And you don't. In my 30 years of doing this, I've never had to pull out any of that. We're going to keep this closed because I said so. Deal. It's always been there have been. But for the most part, it's not like that.
And don't they usually don't they usually defer, like even if it's the fire department scene, if the ranking person with the fire department is like a sergeant and a police lieutenant comes on there, don't they usually defer to the lieutenant rank or and is there any difference as to whether it's just a plain old accident or if it's a crime scene?
Yeah, I mean,
usually the fire department manages the scene until the crime scene takes over. And then sometimes you get called to do stupid things, like we got called to wash down a crime scene, a highway. Well, we're not supposed to do that. That violates EPA. There's hundreds of things, but the police chief is telling you to do it. That happens every day. I can tell you that for a fact. So,
what about when the police are there first? I mean, they're there in hot pursuit. The accident occurs of that. The police are right on the scene. The EMS arrives 3 minutes later, or whatever. Then the big trucks come a little bit later to close down the area. It's a crime scene, and then, but it's both. Like, does it depend on which agency gets theirs first, or once it becomes an accident, as long as as long as evidence is preserved, is it the fire department as the final say, except in that little ecosystem, or is it sometimes where they call the mayor's office and just say, you decide?
It just depends. Like, let's say it was a hot pursuit and they had to cut a person out of a car. Well, that's definitely the fire department's gonna, you can put your guns away, don't point them at us, that type of thing. So we got to cut them out of the car. Then you can do whatever you want to them, but until then, they're mine. So.
What if it's the Bigfoot driving the car?
Pardon?
What if it's the Bigfoot driving the car?
Well, he would be an unlicensed driver, so he got his insurance from the general.
Big handcuffs.
And well, if you were to arrest a Bigfoot, would he understand his Miranda rights?
Oh,
probably not.
No. I don't know that he would go peacefully. So
I don't either.
He would want to go back to wherever it is, the woods or the space station that he's from.
Yeah.
Well, he was driving a car. You'd think that he became pretty accustomed to the, no pun intended, creature comforts.
That's true.
There was an author that wrote a book about Area 51. I can't remember her first name, but her last name was the same as mine, Jackson. And they would tell the pilots that were training and testing on aircraft that was still secret to wear a Planet of the Apes mask so that if another aircraft saw them, that they wouldn't report them because they wouldn't want people to think they were crazy.
What?
Yeah, it was the 50s. So it was a different world then.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, don't tell anyone. You don't want to tell anybody. You don't want to be the pilot that told people that you saw a monkey flying a weird.
I am sorry, but Planet of the Apes came out in the 60s, so we have a little bit of a timeline issue here.
That's true. I guess it was later than that because, our first supersonic was in the 50s, but then the secret project for I can see the plane. 71 didn't come out until the 60s. So yeah, probably about that time.
I mean, as far as you know.
Yeah.
True. As well, and that's just if you base her upon her research, which you're researching something that they don't want you to know about. So
maybe a follow-up interview is merited now with this, with this timeline issue. Now listen, the timeline issue can be resolved by they've solved the time-space continuum thing.
They've solved it?
Yeah, like they moved back and forth in time and they knew about Planet of the Apes and they went to, a party supply store in 1972 and bought a bunch of Planet of the Apes kids masks.
That's what it was.
Then went back because, you can waste time travel on going shopping for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a human driving with a Bigfoot mask and they caused a wreck. I would imagine that, the mask would probably say that it was impairing their vision or some type of, I don't know what the technical stuff would be, but
Yeah, I mean, the flying with those little eye slits is probably not that, I mean, I understand the luchadors wrestle with, their eyes covered. So if you have the specialized training, I guess you can overcome.
Maybe.
True. Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Dean. No, I was just going to say, we'll just get back to the human part of it. So go ahead, Dean. I'll let you.
Oh, never mind. I was just going to make a comment, but it doesn't matter. It's past.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. And so I know I don't want to keep you too long. You're probably stressed for time, but let's just hit on real quick, the human aspect. If it is we'll just say a teenager playing pranks, running around town in a Bigfoot suit, which actually is not uncommon. There's one in Washington, D.C. that every snow, every major snow in D.C., they come out to the mall for a snowball fight. That's a tradition. And he comes out in a Bigfoot. He rides the metro and comes out as a Bigfoot. So, yeah. So there are people that do that, or pranksters. So what if you accidentally, well, it wouldn't be accident if you pull the trigger, if you shot one of them?
Right. You accidentally shot a person and you thought you were shooting a beast. This is the typical lawyer answer, and every lawyer answer begins with 2 words. It depends. And I think it depends on, a few things. If you have been to this snow event every single year and you've seen this person in this costume, then you have no excuse unless this person got into a fight with you and picked up a 2x4 or broke a bottle, bar fight, in a pirate movie style, and was using it like a knife, and then you ended up shooting them. But we're talking about regular self-defense issues here. If you're not familiar with the area, well, how good is the costume, and or what's the situation? So are you in reasonable fear for your life? I believe in DC, it probably has to be some sort of objective fear or very sincere subjective fear. So again, if we're talking about our person that is, maybe mentally ill or very young, some sort of lack of capacity, older person or a younger person is maybe schizophrenic or, suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever, or, if you are the subject of the movie Beau is Afraid and you're afraid of everything, you're paranoid, but that is your reality. Maybe it is self-defense. But I would think proximity counts there. If they're just getting off the metro and you're not, and they climb up on the sidewalk and you just see something moving around and you start shooting across the street, I don't think that you are in any reasonable fear for your safety. Now, you may be arguing that you're trying to preserve the lives of others. I guess then it comes back to reasonable, but I think that would be tougher if everyone else is just going about their business and nobody's screaming. Then you probably have to put yourself into a somewhat diminished capacity state where, I was the only one who could see it and I was saving their lives. And maybe you would be found not guilty by reason of insanity, which puts you into a different type of incarceration. So, I do think it depends, and it depends on the permutations. But, if that kid, instead of going to the snowball, decided to cross the street, go a few blocks off the commercial districts and into the residential districts. I mean, in DC, if you go 3 blocks in any direction, the entire complexity changes. And you start, banging on, or, someone's townhouse door and you're not speaking English, you're grunting and growling. Maybe that is reasonable. In Florida, you could shoot them. You're standing your ground.
I like how you put it, and I think we could sum up almost every case with what you said. It depends.
Yeah.
That is good. Things. That's what they mean by case, and that's what they mean by case law. Is that there's, in common law, is the case law you rely upon is that there are enough cases that it becomes a doctrine, and there's sort of rules and ambits that you can live within and courts can interpret. Then you have cases of first impression, which those are the ones that are ripe for appeal, and even if there's not necessarily a federal question or a constitutional question, may still go up to some level of an appellate court. Maybe a state appellate court, maybe not the Supreme Court, but I don't know. I think if you shot a Bigfoot, there might be some sort of federal and national interest involved in that. But again, the Supreme Court gets to pick and choose what cases they hear. So they'd have to agree, or at least a majority of them would have to agree to take what's called certiorari, which is a very long word that's spelled very difficult. Yeah.
Sounds like it.
It's hard to say.
I would say that that would be a case that the Supreme Court probably would listen to. So, just
maybe if it happened at a post office, they'd probably have to, because that's federal.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Well, I was thinking that the government would probably come in and claim it as their property anyhow and seize it. So,
yeah.
Or on 295, the BW Parkway. That's technically that's the Park Police's domain, although they share jurisdiction with every county and the Maryland State Police as well. Probably for their convenience as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which case it was, but the Park Police, there was a murder there, and they came upon it and they tried to keep it. I think they botched it up royally. I'm not sure that murder ever got solved.
Oh, that's bad.
I remember in Fairfax there was a big incident where they got under pursuit, and Fairfax helped them out, and they ended up with the shooting, and it wasn't a good shoot according to Fairfax, but according to the Park Police it was. And so they got into a little turf war about it, and they had to decide who had jurisdiction. It was real iffy.
Yeah, that's trouble when you call somebody for help. But that's, I guess that's a different show entirely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, have we touched everything that you thought we would, or do you got any points that you think we may have missed?
I didn't come out with any other permutations or scenarios. I was on the show once before, and I've listened. I know it's typically live, so I know that your chat can often be very helpful with that. So I didn't try to game plan a bunch, but I think I came up with most of the scenarios that we could reasonably, and in some cases unreasonably, encounter, like a Bigfoot driving a car. So I feel like I did my part on being the paranormal attorney and on the Para OR Normal Guyz podcast. But if there are any other scenarios, I'm happy to hear them. Or if you get feedback from your audience or the other co-hosts on things that they want to run by me, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm happy to come back on, and cool. Nothing else. First of all, it's fun. Secondly, it's just another place to plug my show. So, hey.
Nice.
True. Well, we are going to welcome you back, and we will keep calling you the paranormal attorney. And, I've already come up with things, some things are simple, like we talk about if you sell a home and it's haunted, you don't tell anyone, the poltergeist is living in the basement. So I've got some ideas from other shows if you're interested. And we could do them as bonus shows. God, if I had a true enough following, I'd do it as a Patreon, but we could do them as bonus shows. I don't see a problem with that. So I enjoyed it.
I'm amenable to either of those things. That's your show, so you decide whether it's bonus shows or regular show. I mean, that's
it's fun. I like it. Jeff, what is your show?
Well, if you like professional wrestling, I'm on a network called Unpopular Review, and you can subscribe to that on YouTube, and you won't miss any shows. They have wrestling and entertainment, and they even do some regular sports as well. But I'm only on the wrestling side. I also have a wrestling podcast called Hammerlock Hangover, which you can find in Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Podbean, you name it. Or if you're a fan of Wrestling Soup, which is a pretty big wrestling podcast, they carry us on their network as well. So that's a great place to support both products. Also, my non-wrestling show is called Garden of Doom, which is also on the Wrestling Soup Network. And obviously they put it on there as an accommodation to me because they're great and they're very kind. But you can also find it on regular sites. And the cousin show is Garden Views. Now, Garden of Doom is paranormal, cryptids, mythology, comparative religion and mythology, theosophy, philosophy, history, alternative history, some pop culture in there as well, and some geopolitics. Garden of Views tends to be closer to what you would consider, earthbound, but legal, business, cyber, science, but things that I think would have a broadband appeal. So I have got a recurring series on what are the laws of Earth and how might they extrapolate to the laws of space, and also the laws of space, period. So I've had law professors on and space attorneys, which is an emerging area, but also had shows on maritime law and like the Longshoremen's Act and the Jones Act, like the seaman, like what's a seaman? Immigration attorneys. I had the retired two-star Air Force general who ran Dulles Airport for 14 years, talking about the international terminals. So I really did try to find, I'm still trying to find, any analog that may go there. I'm looking for international law enforcement. So if anybody knows anyone in any sort of international law, I don't care if it's Interpol or the Coast Guard or FBI or, anything where you have to deal with international jurisdiction, I'd very much like to know how law enforcement might be. Also had a show with
CIA.
They're sort of judicial within a separate mandate, but sure, if they know it, listen, I'm happy to talk to them about that stuff too. I do have a former spy coming on. I think they were British. Well, they're probably still British.
I was thinking of Ross.
Right.
If I could come on there.
Yeah, well, that would be okay. I'm more than welcome. And even if they're not on that topic, I'm sure there's things we could talk about. But I had a guy who, he holds 17 patents. He's building robots with AI. We did a few shows on AI, cybersecurity, cryptocurrency. So, that's Garden Views. You don't have to look separately for Garden Views. It comes with Garden of Doom, whether you want it or not.
Okay, cool. That sounds like good.
Somebody recently asked me, and I don't know the answer to it. I've thought about it. With all the stuff coming up with AI, and they're having artificial intelligence put in robots, and they're giving them, I don't know if it's actual sentient or what, but how to determine it. Is that paranormal? And I was like, that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, it's not paranormal. It's metaphysical or theoretical. I can tell you what the people who are pro-AI say. They say that we as humans do not understand the human brain very well, if at all. And since we're programming the AI, it can't know any more than we do. However, I don't think they're right. And I will tell you why. Not just because I've seen Terminator and iRobot and, in 2001. The whole point of AI is that it learns from trial and error, and it learns exponentially faster than we do. For example, we can't translate Akkadian, but they gave it to AI, and the AI translated the Akkadian in 5 minutes. Now, did they translate it properly? We don't know because we haven't translated Akkadian. But if it got it right, that's proof of concept that the AI can learn things better than we can, that we can't learn ourselves, because it can detect patterns and has, a broader, let's just assume it found the merging of Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and Farsi, and managed to put them together, in various eras, and they figured out Akkadian, which, I don't know if that even makes sense from a timeline of those languages and things like that. But who's to say that the AI can't understand and map the human brain better than humans can, just by doing its own studies and finding the data that's out there and available and coalescing research on Alzheimer's and dementia and strokes and biology and every drug trial that's made it to the public record ever done, and that the AI doesn't. So I think that is a huge loophole in their theory. So I don't think it's paranormal. I just think it's science theory that we haven't gotten to yet. But of course, what other answer would you expect from somebody who has a show called Garden of Doom?
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect the bright side here.
Right.
You wouldn't accept a garden of hope. So let's hope that the people who are in AI are right. That it can accumulate human knowledge more quickly than humans, but it can't surpass it, is basically what their belief is. Or if you want to be a doomsayer, you can adhere to what some random paranormal attorney thinks on here. But I think history will tell you, if you go with the skeptics and the cynics, you're going to be right, 9 out of 10 times. So doom it is.
I agree.
I think that there's something about it, though. it might have some. Do you think it has some sentience, or do you think that? Because I still feel, I mean, as much as it can learn beyond the human brain, I don't believe that it can feel. I think it can mimic, but I don't think it will ever be able to counter like human feelings. I, th- I I still think there's some way that a human mind can challenge it.
Well, if you first of all, you might be correct on a biological level. I don't know. I mean, but we are chemicals and electricity basically,
Mhm.
and those can be mimicked or copied. But basically, what you're talking about is there a soul? Is there some sort of life force, spirit
Oh,
force
true.
in the
Yeah.
living being that cannot be mimicked by a machine? So hopefully you're right. There is, and that can't be replicated.
I know I'm right.
And then you're bad for the Garden of Doom, but you're probably good for the world. Um, so
Yes,
and
I
then
am.
and isn't that the sort of the big question anyway? Is there a soul? Because if there is, then that's everything about afterlife and what happens after we die, which is so it's really just a subset of the big question anyway. So
Yes.
where do we come from? Where do we go afterwards? So
Yeah.
but I would say that's more metaphysical than
Right.
paranormal.
Right.
Though
Okay.
those lines intersect at a certain point, and that's probably right around where they do intersect, right? Because
Yeah.
a wayward soul is a ghost, an evil soul maybe is a demon. I don't know.
I don't know.
Just a
I don't.
bad ghost.
No, I think a demon is something separate from a person,
Could be.
from a spiritual person, or from a soul.
I mean, I think most religions would agree with you. And then there's that sort of that other place, there's the, like in Islam and in some of the Eastern, there's a jinn, which is sort of neither, which is sort of demonic, but also has
Right.
choices, but there are demons there. It's sort
Yeah.
of like a lesser, it's somewhere between human and demon, or human and
Yeah.
angel,
Yeah.
so, I don't know. I find this stuff fascinating, which is why I have a podcast which
Yeah.
covers it all the time.
I'm gonna watch it.
Well, it's just audio, so you won't be watching
Oh,
anything.
well, dang, I'll be listening to it, I guess.
You're not already? You're not a subscriber?
I didn't know about it. I don't know how I missed it last time.
So the most recent
It's
show
like
the most recent show, I this is one of my guests that I really had no business getting, but got, and he's said anyway he'd be happy to come back. He actually said, if you ever need a last minute guest, contact me. I'm like, I never need a last minute guest because I always have 6 or 7 extra shows recorded. But it was
Yeah.
John F. White from Craigenford, which is one of my favorite YouTube shows on Indo-European mythology and comparative mythology. So so that was cool. And the week before that, I had a former military and civilian pilot who, in his retirement, has studied the Bible and wrote a book, and he's come up with a whole different philosophy of how to interpret religion. And I have to be honest with you, at some point it got too metaphysical for me that it broke my brain.
Oh, wow.
Since that time, when I say read, I generally mean listen to on Audible.
Yes.
Mark Booth's The History of Secret Knowledge, or The History of Secret Wisdom.
Mhm.
And I think if I had done that in reverse, I might have been able to follow what Captain McPaden was
Okay.
talking about more. But is that, and before that, a show on the Mothman. So I mean, it's
Wide range.
it's whatever sort of makes me curious, and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So then I get frustrated, and instead of getting frustrated, and instead of actually doing work myself, I try to lure guests on to teach me and pretend it's a show.
That's awesome.
sounds very similar to what I do. So,
Yeah.
and I drag people along with me, kicking and screaming, depending on my mood. In sports, no, not this week. We're in Bigfoot, and Next week we're in space. So.
Well, tomorrow you'll be doing sports, right? Isn't the BCS championship game tonight?
It is tonight, yes. No,
I know you guys are big college. You're a big college football fan. Now, maybe your teams are out of it, but I know that you're big college football fans.
I'll watch it. I think it'll be a good game. And then I'm more curious, I guess, after I've already been following the NFL this morning. I'm more curious where the coaches go, because there's going to be some shakeups in coaching. So I'm curious to see if the Michigan coach ends up back in the NFL. I suspect he will. So rather than pay all those NCAA fines, he'll go to the NFL.
Well, that's always, if you're about to probably lose your college job or all your scholarships anyway. But Jim Harbaugh might be a little bit too crazy for an NFL team.
There's always the Raiders. You can't say that. There's always the Raiders. And that's where I'm going with it. I'm like, because that would just be ripe for him. And the Davis family is known to be a little bit off. So,
well, his brother is my coach, John Harbaugh. He coaches the Ravens. So.
Yep. And y'all are off. You got the top seed. So, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I think this might be his second Super Bowl and our third Super Bowl since we just moved here from 1996. So, and one a decade isn't bad.
No, not at all. Now, considering how hard it is to get there. So,
we haven't won it yet. So maybe I should shut up.
Well, I mean, I think you probably got the better shot than anyone. So.
Yeah, but anything happen. You just have a bad game. You get an injury. You never know. But I'm not taking anything from that Pittsburgh game. The Ravens have nothing to play for.
No, not at all. So, and I'm kind of looking at the Browns. They've got your old quarterback, so I'm kind of looking at them thinking that's a great comeback story. So
it sure is. It's weird because they've Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and I think they had Deshaun Watson. I mean, they've tried to go through. I don't know if there's any franchise that's ruined more, quote unquote, franchise quarterbacks than the Cleveland Browns have.
Yeah. So,
I mean, their last steady quarterback was probably Bernie Kosar.
Probably, yeah. God, that goes back a ways. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to tuck you backstage. I'm going to play our exit song, and you can hang around if you want, or if you've got things to do. I know you were gracious enough to take a little time out for us. I do appreciate it, and hopefully we can do this again.
No, I love that. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you letting me ramble on, plugging my stuff, but I am going to go because I'm starving. And these two 24-year-olds, mostly one of them, they're eating everything. They're eating like they're 14. That's mostly one of them. But like there was like leftover pizza from last night. It's gone by the morning. So somebody's eating in the middle of the night just to make sure I don't get anything.
You're gonna have to kick in your fight for survival there. So
I know the wrong one's moving out. I think as far as my food preservation is concerned. I mean, she's a vegetarian. There's nothing she eats that I want.
If you don't have to kill it, you don't want it.
That's exactly right. Though cheese pizza, there is overlap there.
I love cheese pizza.
But it's just
hard to turn down.
Pineapple, pepperoni, or mushroom on it, and not mushroom, pepperoni, or any kind of meat. She ain't touching it. So I mean, it's easy to. Yeah, I've got my food kung fu strategy.
Yeah. Throw some meat on it, bacon. Bacon
goes on everything.
Yeah. It could be freaking spam. It's just going to preserve it for me.
That's true. All right, Jeff. Well, I look forward to it. I hope we do it again. I'll kick this out as a bonus episode. We'll see what happens. And if you're interested, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I'm always interested. I'm an attention whore.
Nice.
All right. Well, I like the little label of the Paranormal Attorney. So.
Paranormal Attorney / attention whore. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, aren't we all if we're on podcasts? So we're just wanting to get our face in front of it. So
thank you for making me feel less cheap.
All right, Jeff. You have a good afternoon. Go get you something to eat, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All
right. Bye-bye. Deana, that was a great episode.
That was fun. I liked it.
I think for the bonus episodes, we may have to do more of these.
Yeah.
Because, there's some guests that just can't come on Wednesday night at 9 or 10 o'clock. And so we'll just start recording them and we'll put them out here and there. When we get rich and famous, we'll do Patreon. So if you're getting it for free now, you may not order there, sucker. So, Deana, you got to go too because you got a show coming up tonight yourself. So
yep, in about an hour, a little bit over an hour. So I'm gonna relax for a few minutes and get back on.
I'm gonna be tuned in for that one, so I'll be in the chat.
I think today's just like an introduction, so we probably won't get into much. And I'm coming back. I'll be back on Wednesday with Ross.
And I've got to cut some commercials. I've got a new show coming out too, so
I told everybody that to get their wares ready.
If it grows, yes. The Grin and Guardian gang will have their first